The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hi, everybody. I just want to say hello to you, and we're continuing with another little fragmentary webinar, and hopefully all will come out clearly. Okay. Hello. Hi. Just want to read this. We're talking about building the new civilization, and basically what we're going to be looking for is your opinion about how that can be done. We do have so many references to the new civilization, but you've been studying for a while and you've developed your own ideas, I'm sure. So I guess I'm going to read from here. What does it take to build a new civilization? Of course, we may want to know how civilization is different from culture. Usually there's a more intense preservation of values at the heart of culture, and that all works out in some kind of objectification through the civilization of the East and the West and various kinds of countries. Usually when you talk about civilization, it has to do with large areas of the earth, large groups, Eastern, Western, the present civilization of man, and cultures, of course, are identified more with the particular countries in which they emerge, and the highest values are there in the culture. The soul ray has more to do with the culture, but of course, you know, there's a lot of slipping and overlap, and we have both really, because you know we've been talking about the Mahachohan, haven't we? And his creative intelligence, using the ray of creative intelligence, the third ray, along with the seventh, which is kind of a reflection of the third in a certain way. They're both very intelligent. They have to do, though, both with manifestation. All right, so what is required of the new group of world servers as they attempt to implement the divine plan? And then how much of the plan do we really know? If you go to the book Discipleship in the New Age, and you look at the fourth in a series of 6 or 7 meditations that Master DK has given to us, you will find there our approach to the divine plan, humanity's approach, the individual's approach, and it will test you and ask you how you are approaching your part in the divine plan. But really, frankly, the custodians of the plan are the higher masters, and we're not going to know the plan in its entirety whatsoever. Such questions will be the theme of our examination of this vital subject, and no doubt we will all be participants in this new civilization, and it is now time to attempt to plan, excuse me, and to see ahead. Now, to get the ball rolling, I want to talk about 3 types of energy, and I want to ask us why these 3 types of energy are involved in our subject, and how all of them are indeed necessary. Now, the Master R, Lord of Civilization, he's a very Aquarian soul, it appears. Don't forget that every one of us has not only a personal horoscope, We have also a soul horoscope. It's not yet given to us how we are to derive it, but we are given certain methods of using our soul energies through our personal horoscope. For instance, your soul ray will appear, your personality ray will appear, and so forth. And that is a good hint, but the soul horoscope is not given. And Foster Bailey wrote on this, and basically what it's all about is that every one of us, for some reason or another, probably the time of individualization and the place and all that, has a particular astrological sign which is most associated with the expression of our nature as a soul. Now think about that. This is not something that usually comes up in the teaching, and it's semi-permanent, a particular astrological sign which, oh, I'm looking for my glasses, but you know, here they are. What can I say? You know, like looking for soul horoscope. We know our soul ray. Well, at least when Master DK gets finished with us, we will know our soul ray, and it may have changed, you know, from 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe to 1, 2, or 3. But we're not given what is the most permanent, abiding sign associated with our soul nature. And you pretty well, you know, you have to somehow guess that at first. And in a way, it has nothing to do with your personal horoscope. It is abiding over time, and it is influencing you. Now, somehow when I think about Master R, I think Aquarius, which is also a third ray sign, the sign of universality, and that his mind is certainly universal, is really important in the expression of his soul. I think that way. I may be wrong, okay? I know that as Francis Bacon, he may have had the kind of external horoscope which reflected his internal horoscope in order to get the whole age of Aquarius rolling. And he did that basically 500 years with the overlap period before the true age of Aquarius would begin, which DK gives us as the year 2117. I think maybe someone could look it up and ask our favorite omniscient source, Google, when Francis Bacon died. And I think you'll see it was 1616, something like that. He didn't die necessarily. He's always putting in a disappearing act, as I've tried to explain. Anyway, that's 500 years ago. I think it's, is it 5 or is it 400 years ago? Wait a second. It's 400 years ago. 400 years ago, and if you look at the time of his birth, it's closer to 500 years ago because he was born in the 16th century. But from the time he so-called died, he seems to have died about 400 years before this moment. And by the time the official Aquarian age begins, according to Master DK, it will be 500 years. So, you know, he is the universal human being, and he'll be apparently with us for a long time. Because this morning we studied, and various of you have talked about the duration of a Mahachohan, millions of years, possibly. 2, 3 root races? That's a long time, isn't it? So he is beginning something in 1925, which will continue with the Earth in our solar system long after the Christ and the Buddha have departed to other realms of service. The Manu, of course, is here a long time too, but not as long as the Mahachohan. And you know how it is? When you're looking at the 3-2-1 series, it's the third ray always takes longer to unfold than the second or the first. And DK gives it to us in another way. He says, third ray people learn much slower than the second ray types, and second ray types much slower than first ray types. So there's something about this foundation on the third ray that takes a long time to construct. And that is the reason the rhythm of the ray itself is the reason that those who officiate over the third ray have to stay at their posts longer. The cycle is like this: 900 years, 500 years, 100 year. 9,000 years, 5,000 years, 1,000 years. You see what I'm doing? I'm doing ray 3, 90,000 years, ray 2, 50,000 years, ray 1, 10,000 years. Isn't it interesting that the second ray is exactly in the middle of the other two? The only rays that have cycles which are corresponding to the number of the ray are the first ray and the seventh ray. So any Mahachohan is undertaking a tremendous, and I want to use the word work, and for a long, long time. As a matter of fact, it ends, the mantra ends, the worker and the work are one, in the third ray mantra having to do with these matters. Now, you know, so it just depends. A short, intensely suffering appearance coming in under the second ray, like the Christ, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, so it goes in the Bible, or this longer, intelligent manipulation of forces as a Mahachohan. Okay. Now, what I want to say, there are three types of forces that are involved here. And every year we have a repetition of them. Sorry. Okay, let's see if I manage here a little bit. Aries, restoration of the plan, the forces of restoration. Well, before you're going to have a civilization that is befitting the Aquarian age and the age in which more and more human beings become members of the fifth kingdom of nature, the plan is going to have to be somewhat restored. You look around the earth right now, and there's lots of turmoil on the way to restoring the divine plan. By the way, I always found it amusing. I think I said it the other day. DK says, Confucius is going to appear in China again and cause a disturbance. And when they talk about a disturbance, you know, they're not given to exaggeration. He really means a disturbance. So won't it be interesting when you consider the way it goes right now in China and the materialism of it and all that under Taurus. See the materialistic interpretation of the sign Taurus and the superficial kind of diplomacy under Libra. It's a great nation, but Confucius will get it back on its proper path. He's a master now. Okay. So, like he says something like this. these disturbances. From the point of view of the hierarchy, they are minor disturbances. From the point of view of the personality, they are appalling. It's, it's just personality considers it a great crisis, the passing through, and the soul, the hierarchy looks said, well, this too shall pass. You know, that's the story of King Solomon, right? He was asked, tell us, O wise Solomon, some statement which is true under all circumstances and any place and at any time. And he said, this too shall pass. And that's rather interesting. The only thing that doesn't pass, you know what it is, or maybe we don't, is the absoluteness doesn't pass. Okay. Now, that's the first type of forces, the forces which restore the plan. The second type of force is the forces of enlightenment under Taurus. And every Wesak, we not only get a big dose of shambolic will, we get the unfettered enlightenment of Shambhala, which works out as 4 great universities and many esoteric schools and spreads all over the world. And in a way, people who are with Master DK and Master Kuhumi and so forth, they're involved very much with the forces of enlightenment. Now, sometimes you kind of look at what's going on today. Maybe I used to like to look at these documentaries of the rallies, the Nuremberg rallies in Germany. It was very well organized, but not very enlightened, was it? It was the music wasn't good either. Basically, papa. But thousands gathered and screamed on cue, and then the madman came out and foamed at the mouth and said what he had to say. You know what I mean? So you can be organized and very powerful in your own way without being enlightened. And by the way, he was a Taurus. It is a sign that can be a very negative and materialistic. And he looked at every nation in terms of its national resources, natural resources. He wanted the resources of the other nations. So that's what he was going to do, because Germany didn't have it. He was going to conquer their resources and then conquer the world for the sake of National Socialism or Nazism. But the higher part of it is the forces of enlightenment. And when you look at really, maybe I shouldn't mention it, but Master Moria said, a nation can degenerate very rapidly. It can fall rapidly. And I read it and I said, okay, And then I saw what's happening in the American political situation right now. And you see the possibility of the national values falling rapidly. And you see all those red hats and empty eyes and, all the cheering that's going on. And I just don't see any difference between that and Nazism as it came to Earth. And he warned us, fascism will attempt to reappear. What will ward it off? Now the question is, who's stronger? The intelligent, spiritually inclined, humanistic people, or the mindless red hats? That's all. What can you say? And that's being decided right now. And that could be a cause of the delay that he warned against, the possible 300-year delay. But now the point, the third series of forces, what would I say? What are they? You tell me. what's the third series of forces that are coming in? They're coming. They're already here. We have the forces of restoration. We have the forces of enlightenment. And what's next? Well, it's going to lead to that for sure. It will lead to it. But it's called, as you probably know, in the inner depths of your mind, the forces of reconstruction. And what's it ruled by? Gemini. Now, basically, reconstruct what? Well, there was a lot of shattering after the Great War. 1914 to 1945, 31 years of war, with the war going underground for a certain period and then reemerging again later. What had to be reconstructed? The psyches of people, their cities, their civilization had to be reconstructed. So we're rebuilding, as it says somewhere in the books, rebuilding the shrine of civilization. Something like that. In other words, we are building anew right now under the forces of Gemini. So the Christ is out there in the desert with this dark figure at his side, looking. The Christ has a cane. He's blondish, and it was drawn by Nicholas Roerich, painted. And he takes his cane, and he first of all, he puts his hand in the sand. Then he puts his foot in the sand on the other side. And then in the middle, he draws some kind of flower or other, signifying the flowering, the flourishing of civilization. And the motto that went with it, you may remember it from Agni Yoga, by human hands and human feet, he said, shall the new civilization, the new temple be built. Okay? So that's Gemini, right? Gemini is ruling especially the hands, and we find out that Mercury is also, the ruler of Gemini, is also associated with Sagittarius. Sagittarius, you have the winged heels of Mercury as your arrow flies through the two pillars of Gemini. So they are interrelated. We human beings, we're the hands and feet. And the masters are the heart of it all, and Shambhala is the head of it all. And we have to master the forces of reconstruction. Now, it was really dire after World War II, just bombed out. My friend was telling me in London that, the kids would be playing, but they had to watch out for the unexploded bombs. And children and others died that way from the bombs going off because they were touched in some way, et cetera, et cetera. It was rubble. That's reconstruction is needed. The hands are definitely needed, and the feet hold you up. So we've pretty well built the world in many places. Although when you look at how people are eating on the garbage heaps in the eastern part of our world, the kids are sent out and find something in these garbage heaps that the family can eat today. You say, well, this is not allowed. This cannot be. And we need reconstruction of the patterns that force people to live like worse than beggars and without the proper necessities of life. Reconstruction. So in a way, the forces of reconstruction have not been thoroughly applied. And then what about the psyche of people? What shape is the human psyche in these fine days? And is glamour still a problem? Yeah, it is. And is illusion a problem? Yes, it is. And what about the chaos of Maya? Is it a problem? Yes, it is. So all of that reconstruction of the psychological nature of the human being has to be undertaken, and it's not yet finished by any means. So the Christ is never going to take away from our shoulders what we have to do. And the hierarchy doesn't work that way. If they did, everything would be slowed down to a crawl. If you don't let a kid learn to do things, then they just never do, and they're always going to be dependent on someone else to do them. So DK says, yeah, hierarchy could do this, but you would learn nothing, and you would revert back to the bad old conditions when the time was right, okay? The forces of reconstruction to build a new civilization. Now, here's the question. This is the question for all of us, and a question that the people who are gathered here as well, some 30 of you or almost 28, and I do welcome you, thank you for being here again, many of you. If you're going to reconstruct or build a new civilization out of the old, and we've seen the need, because it's not yet with us, the new civilization, what are your guiding lights? What do you want the new civilization to look like? Because we have a situation where the new group of world servers has to do this. They have to shed light on the process so humanity is rightly guarded in undertaking the new construction. So what do you think is important in a new civilization? I'm going to leave it at that and let you, in a tone of voice that is louder than you would usually talk and slower, to give us your idea of what should be part of the new civilization, to make sure it's the kind of civilization that really is supposed to appear according to the divine plan. Yes, so.
I think that it's time to fundamentally have to be based on right relationships on all levels, so that we can cover economy, humanity, people,
every aspect of right relations.
Right relationship going, then nothing is left outside. It's all included.
And that would take an interconnectedness of people. If you believe that what I do affects what you do, and what you do affects what the other person does.
Yeah. What I'm gonna do here is, since you're gonna be doing the talking, I'm gonna the microphone so that it's a little more sensitive. So, right relations
Interconnectedness.
and interconnectedness. Now, it's very interesting, but DK somewhere says that one of the major themes of Shambhala at this time is right human relations. And of course, if there were right human relations, then the microcosms under humanity would be more rightly related to, wouldn't they? Now you see some of the people undertaking this. Luther Burbank, the great biologist, was a friend of Yogananda. So he went to Yogananda's centers and created a special kind of ecology and beauty, and you saw the plant life there really thriving, enhancing everything that Yogananda was trying to bring across. Matter of fact, if you're ever, I've really only been to the one in Encinitas, California. Have any of you ever been there in Encinitas? Okay, it's a nice, really nice place, and actually, you know, it's a story. They built a temple there on the end of the cliff, and then came the rains, and the temple went down. You see, yeah, it's sad. That was in the earlier days, too. Anyway, they showed the spot where it used to be, and it couldn't be safely sustained, you know, the way they did. But anyway, Luther Burbank did his job. Okay. Now, what about the ecology with the animal kingdom? You find a lot of people really giving their attention to right relations with the animal neighbors. I'm thinking about, was it Jane Goodall? Is she
Yes.
the lady that worked with the gorillas, the mountain gorillas? You know, and there are always these mindless poachers that are coming in there with their guns. Because look, the pattern is wrong. They can't make any money. So they come and they kill off for the rhinoceroses and all for the sake of ignorance. You know, some kind of the rhinoceros horn is an aphrodisiac, which is desired in the East and especially in China. So they kill the animal, cut off the horn, and that's it. The animal's just left to rot. See, and so terrible things are happening in relation to the animal kingdom, and people are warning about a great extinction all over again. We go through these periods of global extinction and dying off, you know. Well, this time humanity has the means to really accelerate that kind of thing. But on the other hand, you read of wonderful care that is going on, you know. You had a thing on the thing with that little koala bear didn't make it, but the lady rushed in and pulled him out of the fire and renamed him Lewis or something like that. And they tried to keep him alive. He had been badly burned, but they said it's going to be too painful. We just can't allow this to happen. So they had to put him down. 150 koalas at least died in that area. I remember that we used to have classes at the home of Dennis Merrifield, who was in the south of, around Sydney, south of Sydney, and he had huge barns, you know, and all of the cars and paraphernalia from the movie Mad Max were stored in his facility. And in that area, we all went one day to a koala sanctuary, and we all had a chance to hold our koala and get feet on them, of course. And they were such wonderful little animals. On the other hand, you see some tremendous successes. Here's this golden retriever, apparently a very kind animal and strong, who is being walked by his master, as we often walk by our master, you know, and suddenly stops and plunges into the icy water. And then far away on the other side, you see the retriever dragging some.
A deer, a baby deer.
Exactly. And it became clear that it was a little deer fawn that had fallen in somehow and was pretty much unconscious, and the retriever sort of licked it back to health, and then the human beings who were involved with the retriever were animal people, and they brought the deer in for resuscitation, and they became friends over a little time before the deer could be re-released into the wild. What causes that? you see wonderful cross-species care. You know, cats and pigs and dogs, and you know, they somehow care for each other, not just dog eat dog, as it were, you know, in the Arctic and all that. And there are people who back that up and make sure that the animals are rightly treated. Now, just imagine the animal is developing the fifth ray. In other words, the animal is on the verge of a little bit of enlightenment, a little bit of coming to itself in terms of self-consciousness. That's what the animal lacks. That fifth ray center under Venus, which says, I'm individualized, I am I. Now, people are helping with that. And although we may have to wait until the next round, says DK, for the animals, and also for the gorillas and chimpanzees, which are already individualized, to get out of their prison due to the so-called sin of the mindless and the secret doctrine. In this very round, there will be animals becoming humans, and it will be facilitated by human beings who actually care in the right way for the animals. So we don't have to necessarily wait all those millions of years before the door to the human kingdom is open again, but it's because people really care. So basically what we have here is that right human relations in Shambhala and all over the world will lead to right relations in the lower kingdoms and even in the mineral kingdom. He said all those people who are building bombs and all the rest of it, they come from Vulcan, they come from Mercury, wherever they come from. As soon as their second petal is more open than their egoic lotus, they won't do that anymore. And they will be consecrated to using technology to improve human relations and general love. So it's on its way. And you just have to notice it. Look, in the arcane school, in the old days, I remember the old days, and I joined the arcane school almost 50 years ago. And they always said they recognize anybody that's a member of the group of world servers at the end of every meditation course. Well, maybe you did, but then what do you do? Sorry. What do you do when you recognize such a person? How do you improve their lives? And I would say, meditatively, imaginatively, thought projectively, etc. There are ways to strengthen the members of the new group of world servers that you recognize are really working for the manifestation of the divine plan. Yeah.
Just one point.
Louder.
Just one point, that the agents of the new group of world service has to be people of goodwill, because goodwill is the energy of which right human relations are the effect.
Yes. It's like the outcome I talked about yesterday. The Christ ashram had 70 around it that were fairly related to what was going on before. And then there was the 500 that were interested. So the 500 that were interested symbolically stand for the women and men of goodwill, and the 70 stand for the new group of world servers. They're really going to persist, and they're going to do something about it. A man or woman of goodwill, means well, but may be more of an aspirant and may not follow through, So, yes, every member of the new group of world servers is imbued with the energy of goodwill. And what is goodwill, says this Benton?
Love in action.
Love in action. Goodwill is love in action. So, you know, all these things are germane when it comes to building civilizations. So far, what we have here, the idea of right relations, and, well, you know, look, the fourth ray is coming in. How will this help? Any ideas? How will the fourth ray help us in the building of the new Aquarian civilization?
When you get greater creativity, thinking outside the box, it allows perhaps the new ideas based on the new ideals to manifest, because it opens the mind, it opens the vision, and creates greater possibilities.
There's going to be a lot of that.
Yeah.
Aquarius, we know, is a very original sign. And the Capricorn has a solution, and it's usually, you know, what you would expect. It's usually a fairly conventional solution, and you do it right, and you do it to the end. But along comes Aquarius, and comes in at a completely different inventive angle. Now, you know what's really interesting? I have a picture somewhere of Thomas Edison. After he had been up 5 straight nights inventing something or other, I wonder if I might be able to find it. He didn't look so good. He was a young man though, so maybe he could stand it. And so let's see. I'm going to see if I can find Mr. Edison. Now, Blavatsky knew him, and believe it or not, he was a member of the Theosophical Society.
Wow.
Obviously, a fifth ray soul, obviously, and he's an Aquarian. You know, it's the inventor's sign. Always come at it from a different angle. This is Edison after 5 all-nighters. I would like to, you know, I don't know if you've ever, you ever go like that, you know. Okay, well, now, okay, look.
Michael, that looks like you at the end of a whip.
I was just going to say there's a resemblance.
I tell you, but he's shown in 1888, after 5 straight all-nighters, perfecting the phonograph, he was partial to cocaine. Cocaine-based wine. Okay? So he's an Aquarian, but when you look at him, you also see a little Capricorn. And his moon is in Capricorn. And I think his Mars was in Capricorn.
Wow.
And so he was supported by this kind of, you know, never give upness of Capricorn. You know, I would just, what I would do here, if I knew what I was doing, not opening the case here. Come on now. I'll just show you a little something else, if I can. Sometimes my computer decides that it's overburdened and it protested. You know, it says you put too much on me. Oh my goodness, it's you know that the moon is in Scorpio now?
Wow.
Okay. So anyway, that's it. Yeah, but not for long.
Capricorn.
We're going to be a happier group
What a
tomorrow.
combination.
We're pretty happy right now.
That's why you went.
Come on now. Is that going to work? Okay, Thomas Alva Edison. Okay.
Yes, no.
Look at the sign of the third degree initiative. When it is the sign of the third degree initiative, Mars and the moon together. Fantastic. In Capricorn. So he'll go through any number of sacrifices in order to get to the bottom of what he's doing. And Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and when you look at him, you got that feeling, oh, you know, is Scorpio rising, never give up. And Mars rules it. In Capricorn, Helena, is he your brother? So anyway, he's full of ideas. Jupiter in Gemini. He's undertaking what is new with Uranus in Aries. He is an Aquarius with Mercury in Aquarius and Neptune in Aquarius. And that Neptune in Aquarius is probably why he joined the Theosophical Society. Something in him knew there's more behind the scenes, you see. But Blavatsky was a little rough on him, and he said, well, he's not going to make too much progress because of his personal disbelief, she said. So he probably believes some things and not others. But there's Scorpio, Aquarius, Capricorn, and we see one of the great inventors of the world. And so much is going to be invented when we talk about the Aquarian age. We're not going to, you know, sometimes you look at science fiction and the cars are driving in the air and all the rest of it. It's already happening. Who knows? You know, you'll be able to teleport your way over here to, hopefully you don't get rearranged in the process, you know. Beat me up, Scotty. So, you know, there's all kinds of manipulation of matter that is going to occur in the new civilization. What else? What else will occur? Or should occur, or in your opinion, right? In the relationship, by the way, if you get fourth ray harmony between people, it will be a sign that the Buddhic energy is beginning to express. And the Buddhic energy is going to be directly related to the energy of the first initiation. See, when the causal body becomes filled with that love energy, there's a stream of energy coming in from the Buddhic plane into the causal body. And that means a fitness for initiation. A lot more people are going to be tuned in with that, which is going to lead to the harmony and right relations we're talking about here. Okay, so what else? A new civilization. What else? Anybody want to take notes about this? I don't have anything down here. No, we didn't find. And by the way, our group here, out in the world, there's 33 of them, I think. You can also raise your hand, and if you know, what we're trying to do is what makes a new civilization. Now, obviously, the moral factor, bringing in the soul ray of our planet, which is the second ray, is its time is now. And that's why the Christ and the hierarchy are reappearing, and it's the seventh time, is it? Somehow, with the seventh ray of manifestation has occurred with the sign of Aquarius since the Aryan race began. Keith Bailey has the figures on that, but this is the final time, and it can be a real manifestation. Have new possibilities. What else? What else will?
Master Dita is telling us to pay greater and greater focus on the June meditation of the Christ energy, which has to be strengthened because it's a festival of the Christ. Prior to his, to strengthen the energies prior to his reappearance.
That is very important. Now look, he says Good Friday is on its way out.
Yeah.
As it's to be celebrated. You know, it's a pretty morbid day, whatever, but at least it's, the celebration of the dead Christ, So that's Good Friday. And even the Wayside will be changed in its approach. And the new group of world servers, which will include high initiates in it, even the fourth degree, will be taking over from the Buddha. Okay? So all of that is going to develop.
In 19...
But not the Festival of the Christ. That is not being dispensed with. The Festival of the Christ, the Festival of Humanity, the Festival of Goodwill, it's all the same festival. That remains. That remains. And the closer the Christ comes, the more we need the direct invocation of the Christ. So that festival is to stay here with the element. Yeah.
You mentioned the Wesak. You mentioned the Wesak.
Yeah.
35 years after the Wesak cycle started, he said, in which leads to 1981,
Yes.
the key energy of the Wesak is going to be changed, that it wouldn't be presented in the same way which was up to that point. But he is not giving how.
No, it doesn't. I was working in the arcane school at the time and worked there for 5 years or something. And Mary Bailey got it in her head. This is the year, 1981. And we went through all kinds of discussion and visualization and anticipation of how this Wesak energy would be changing, including the fact that the Buddha might not be returning to the valley once every year the way he had been. So in a way, but don't forget, the Buddha is Taurus, right? He's the archetypal Taurus in a major decade surrounding our planet. Christ is Pisces, Buddha is Taurus, and Hercules, what would you expect? Scorpio. Hercules is Scorpio.
Do you think that it has happened already? What is your thought about it?
Well, did you come to some kind of inspiration, whatever, when you're discussing this 1981 with Mary Bailey? That what kind of energy or we talking about?
I allowed myself to remain non-committal in my judgment.
Oh, okay.
Because I just don't see how we're in a position to truly know. So I continue to act as if he showed up.
Well, okay, at least in a positive,
I kept it positive.
Yeah.
And then a number of us went in the year 2000 to the valley. And we
Then it
acted,
changed.
and we acted as if,
Yes.
it was continuing. Certainly, some kind of flow from Shambhala is
Yes.
continuing. It has to.
It has to
It
open
just
the
has-
door.
It has to.
It has to open the door to the will to good also, and this, which will bring this maybe, and this is just my hypothetical whatever, which because we're dealing with primarily with Taurus, where it's Balkan, not the first red. you know.
Yeah.
So it's along the maybe first ray energy, Shambhala, will to good, you know.
And we would be amazed at how much Vulcan, the planet, is related to light. It's very close to the sun, and there's an old saying in mythology that Vulcan polishes or burnishes the shield of Mars. Mars is the whole personality.
Which was given by Apollo.
Apollo gave that. Yeah, so that tells us that the light value hidden in the non-sacred personality is brought out by Vulcan. And more, when Vulcan is discovered, that light will be with us. It will be discovered when we're ready for it. Now, so.
Wait.
Yeah.
About this shaping up and molding up is a very important metaphor again, because it is the chalice, that the chalice has to be peeled. It has to be built in order to express the divinity. If there is no chalice, you cannot express the divinity. And I was still thinking about this because many years I have been contemplating what does it mean that the group will take over the Vesak time. Think about it. Let us not just jump over that as a fact. Okay, it will happen, or maybe it has happened. But could we see that it could have been happening? When I'm looking, I'm thinking it has not happened. I think it has not happened.
I just think that humanity was thrown into a very dangerous and unanticipated situation. Atomic energy was not supposed to be discovered by humanity until the age of Capricorn, 2,500 years ahead. And all of a sudden, here we are in the playpen with the bomb. See what I mean? So tremendous fear arises, and the likelihood that we might have to start all over again, as DK said, and see if a humanity could be raised up that actually would be more in line with the plan. And I think that the Buddha is needed. I tend to go along with.
I'm just thinking about the awareness factor, what I could think and see. And or maybe there are those hidden groups somewhere who are working already in that sense. Who knows?
What do you mean when you say a chalice has to be built? You mean physical, emotional, and mental?
Yes. So this vehicle has to stand the power and the weight of light.
Yeah.
So and it is one of the key things to understand that how anything can be manifested. If there is not the chalice, you cannot bring anything down. And the whole plan is about that the earth is brought to heaven, yes. If the heaven is brought to earth. So this is the whole point. The redemption of everything and coming back to, or trying to reach the level where earth should be already now. So
there have been a bunch of changes, and they've had to modify their plans. If you read at the end of Initiation Human and Solar, it is definite that the hierarchy and the Christ are expected before the year 2000. The book was written in 1922, and there's no atomic bomb. Then later, a whole change. Protective work is needed to save humanity from itself. And look at when you're just going to blast off and go to heaven or paradise forever, who cares about what goes on here? One of the Ray Lords says to the other, why do you kick the earth like a ball? This is such a poor, mean thing, you know? Don't you respect it? But there are certain types of rays that don't. And they have, in their imagination, their future perfect home forever, but they are safe. Which is a dangerous attitude, because they don't care about you or anybody else, and they don't care about our planet. But the seventh ray types are coming in with their new ecology, and they want to save the planet. They really do. They want it to be right, yeah.
This is just really a helpful thing. There is a new document called A Fantastic Fungi. And this man has discovered that underneath the ground, there's mycelium from the mushrooms. And they have a whole network. And that product of the mushrooms can help with vaccinations, medicine, pests that are will just give spores and go die, and no pesticides, water filtration. It's a beautifully done movie. The Time released photographs of Louis Schwartzberg, who did amazing things. And anyway, I recommend it highly because it just gave so much hope and encouragement to me.
Yeah. Look, I heard about this, and
What was the name of it?
Fantastic Fungi.
Okay.
How do you spell fungi? F-U-N-G-U-I?
they're GI.
G-I.
Because they're experimenting with all packaging being made of that now.
Right, right.
It's just goes on and on and on. This gentleman, Paul Stemmons, who is doing this work, says it can change our world. It can stop climate change. And he has all these ideas. And he's just one guy, and now eventually is receiving recognition.
Only one is needed.
Yeah,
But there are a lot of people working on it all over the place.
all over the world now. And they're connected, and they're networked.
Take a step against it.
He
Who
had
wants
about,
to import all the medicine from America for very high prices to England to stand it? That's why Trump and David Cameron,
Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson, are making a pact
Yeah.
before the election about many things.
right.
Health,
But this
money.
gentleman, yes, this gentleman moved out of America because America was stopping his research.
Yes,
He moved
exactly.
to British Columbia, and now
Right.
it's
They
going
will
his
lose
name?
a lot of
What's
money.
his name?
Yeah.
And that always is a
Yeah.
primary reason to stop.
Let's look at
You
fantastic.
know?
Dan, can you spell please?
I don't.
This has been in the news quite a bit lately. And look, we cannot say that hierarchy doesn't know the answer to the method of getting through these tremendous difficulties. But it needs responsive human beings.
That's it.
It cannot just come here, take over, and force it on anybody. That's not how they work, according to Syrian law of freedom. And speaking of freedom, the three lords of liberation have something to do with what the new civilization should be too, don't they? So they are connected with the air signs, right? So liberty, equality, fraternity, right? Liberty, awareness, equality, library, fraternity, Gemini, yeah. So a civilization in which the inherent goodwill or the inherent will of every human being can be released without constraint is desirable. It will be, I want to say, a meritocracy. You know what is a meritocracy? You don't ascend because of the family you're born in, or necessarily the school you went to. Oh, they went to Harvard, we got to hire them, it'll look good on our record. No, it is actually, the philosopher king idea from Plato. It can be criticized in various ways. Most of the ego gets in the way, but it has something very good, and it's a model of hierarchy. I think Plato was invited to come and set up this philosopher king idea in Syria, or there was a tyrant, you know, in those days, and he invited Plato to come and experiment and set up your idea of the philosopher king. Of course, the tyrant wanted to be the philosopher king. This is a little bit problematic because Plato saw that he wasn't suited. And Plato, you know, would not compromise, and so the tyrant arrested him and had him shipped off to some slave colony. But on the way, pirates attacked the ship, and they took a liking to Plato. They freed him, and he was allowed to return to Athens to carry on his ideas. These people in high power probably think they're just a perfect philosopher king. Can you imagine the president of the United States as the philosopher king? Well, maybe there have been some people that maybe could begin to fill that requirement. So you have to be trained. You have to be 50 years old minimum. Okay, you have to be very well trained in all kinds of knowledge and ways of living, and sacrificial and selfless, and then maybe you're in a position to guide humanity correctly. It was never entirely expressed. Never has been entirely expressed.
There was, there was one disciple, I don't remember now his initials, where DK was giving him all the quality, just as an example for us, for leadership. What kind of qualities the leader or the president has to have to be a good leader for the nation, you see? And so I found that as a very inspiring, you know, to read that, that how eventually this world should be run.
You can get that up for us. I think that would be interesting if you can find it.
Yeah, I can find it.
Yeah, yeah.
As
I can find it.
Sir, he said, the great leader is one of whom the people say, we did this ourselves.
Yes, yes. Isn't that interesting? The selflessness of slipping out of the main focus and then giving it over to the people, at least in their own consideration. Very interesting. Now, so many of our leaders today are egotistical. And, you know, that's the problem with the tyrant. He wanted to be the philosopher king, immediately contradicting what a philosopher king really was. Mm-hmm. However, he did say of Ataturk, whose work has been vociferously countered by everyone, probably enemies through the ages, that he handled the Shambhala force in a most disinterested. In other words, he was not wanting anything personal out of it whatsoever. He had a few minor personality difficulties. He didn't really get in the way. He was an alcoholic and a womanizer, but those are little things. You know, I mean, in other words, from the Tibetan's point of view. Look at Winston Churchill. It's like he saved Western civilization, and he drank a fifth of bourbon before noon. So, you know, you got to be careful how you judge, you know.
Michael, what was this one thing that he said to that lady.
Oh. No, that's the one. Oh, yes.
No,
Oh, that's right. A lady came upon him and said, "Why, sir, Winston Churchill, you are drunk." And he says, "Yes, no. But tomorrow I shall not be drunk, and you shall still be ugly." And I think Oscar Wilde has some funny things too, you know. Some of these English wits, you just cannot keep up with it. Matter of fact, in Churchill's, yeah, about a fourth grade, you know.
How can humanity right this minute thinking the Aquarian styled expansion of war into space?
yes.
Because that's a huge immediate problem which needs to be worked
Be able to wipe out your enemy from directly above them and give them no time to react. Well, obviously, wait a second,
Science. For me, it's science. May the power of the one life fall through the group of all true servants. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek aid of the great ones. May we fulfill our part into the one word through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech.
Bong. So, friends, we've come up with a few things. Obviously, not everybody has yet had a chance to speak. What is it? Back to Joanna. Loud? Leah, was it?
Using the Aquarian energy in war and space, and
Oh, it can be.
how can that be countered?
Can be. Epidemics can wipe out humanity. That's Aquarius too. And the space programs that give any country great dominance, anything can be misused. So that's where our work comes in, distributing the great in locations, telling about the hierarchy persuasively and in a way that promotes acceptance and not just resistance. And as you say, right human relations, and as you say, the kind of unification. How did you say it, Joanna?
Interconnectedness of all life.
Yeah, so that leads to the unity, eventually to the oneness. Not everybody can have that, but the oneness of all life, the interconnectedness of all life, the inventive spirit, the idea of sharing. Now, what does Christ need? Sharing the economic goods of the world, and that's already established among governments before the great Lord can come. A measure of peace, because the peace will arise from respect and the sharing and from the abandonment of rapacious gangsterism. This is all for me and not for you, And then what is happening, of course, politics and religion are cleaning house. They really are. And if they're not doing it on their own, someone is doing it for them, reminding them of what they have to straighten out. And then, of course, the death of materialism. He said, well, here's Japan. It's bombed twice. Even, I think it was Nagasaki was not even meant to be bombed. But it was just one of those things with the weather, and the pilot had to release that bomb. Anyway, terrible thing, such suffering, and when you look at Japan's history with radioactivity, it's really interesting, including the recent, what's it called, Fukushima thing. And then Edgar Casey saying something which is appalling. He says it will be shown that Japan must sink into the sea. I don't know. what does that really mean? But anyway, this great nation has much to change. Under Aquarius, it's all being released into the ocean. You have these tremendous die-offs of life forms, whales and other coral and all kinds of living things in the ocean are dying together in great quantities. And the prophet Amos, he says, you will die in a polluted land. So obviously, some ones have to awaken to the ecology of what's happening, and it's going to be a battle between the unrealistic pie in the sky, heaven is all we need, 6 straight pipes, and the realists on the 7th grade. Realism and enlightened materialism, we need that for a new civilization, don't we? The very lowest creative hierarchy is ruled by Aquarius, meaning that the outer form will be adapted in a new and better way to the inner intention. A new civilization will know all kinds of things about health and better management of the ecosystem, which is our body. And he says you're going to have a lot stronger bodies, more resilient. The 7th ray is coming in. Etherically, you're going to be alive. The new civilization, where the etheric investigation is not yet the soul. Someone was saying, well, we hope in a very short time that France will make this revelation of the soul scientifically, but, it will. But not yet, because other things have to be proven first. So the etheric nature of matter has to be proven. And the constitution of man has to be acknowledged in a new civilization. And a great democracy has to occur in a new civilization where everybody gets a chance according to his or her merit. Meritocracy, right? It's not hereditary privilege. It's nothing like that. Because so often people who don't deserve what they're getting are born into those situations where they get everything you can imagine. They are not producers of anything of real value. So, we can ponder a new civilization, the elevation of the human being, the elevation of the human group consciousness, the law of group progress will be recognized, and people will advance in groups. Now, rather than the rugged individual, I remember a debate back in 2016, and it was on television, and X said to Y, well, look, you haven't paid any taxes in years. And then X said to Y, what does that prove? In terms of your loyalty to your country and, trying to help support the country. And Y said, it proves that I'm smart.
Me. Yeah.
I said, okay, hang on to the guardrails now. It proves that I'm smart. See that rugged Leonian individualism, the misuse of the Leo energy in the age of Aquarius. You may notice, I'm harping on what I know most, the last president had Aquarius rising in his chart, even though he was Leo. The present president has Leo rising in his chart, and his sun sign is in the personality sign of America, Gemini, not the Gemini. In fact, there's so many Gemini running all over the place. I just don't know. I mean, the Boris Johnson, Gemini. Donald Trump, Gemini.
Jeremy Corbyn, who ran against
Jeremy
Boris
Corbyn,
Johnson.
the speaker, Adam Schiff,
Schiff is a gentleman.
Gerald Nadler, Justice Committee, Gemini. And others I've noticed are coming in this great battle of the opposites under the sign Gemini. That's their sun sign, mostly. And I said, what's going on? That's just too many Geminis, you know. And anybody here Gemini? Oh, good, we can.
She's my rising sun.
Gee.
Rising sign.
The moon and rising
I
sun.
will get you off the book too. Okay, well, it's a wonderful sign this year.
No, I was just, did you want to say something?
Well, I'm thinking of that. I'm always afraid of not speaking well, and this is why I always shut up. But I have some ideas, but.
Yeah, well, we'll have a chance for you to bring forward these.
But it does not matter. Of course, if you have a thought now, please. Okay, it's.
Yeah, I was thinking that we need a lot of purification in general, you know, since the social media is in the power, has empowered people, but it is releasing a lot of dark traits in humanity. And this, I was thinking that maybe the proper way is going to help to deal with this in oneself, and also between the others. But I don't know, this is just kind of, I mean, I think that there's a lot of negative things that are coming up very quickly. But in the end, there must be something that's going to help resist this and take it out partially quickly as well. And I don't know why I'm totally maybe the purvey is going to be helping to disorganize this lower.
Anyway, but you feel brave, just come along and say, because this is the you know, the wonderful thing about group sharing and on when we are studying together, because we do not have to be perfectly in the edge of our thoughts. So our thoughts are starting somewhere and then they are developing, and that's why it's important that you bring it into the group field and then we wander on together.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, and maybe I'm confusing Roger Bacon with Francis Bacon, but that was not Shakespeare, was it?
Individuals separated by 200 years.
And Francis Bacon was William
Same
Shakespeare.
soul.
No?
They're the same soul.
Same soul. And was that William Shakespeare? Was that, there was a
Well,
pseudonym,
maybe not.
it was a pseudonym for him.
William Shakespeare was an actor. He was not especially, this is, you know, people will kill me for saying this, he was an actor. He was not especially literate about reading and writing. And they used him, the creative forces in the court used him as a front so that they would not be accused of writing these plays.
So who did write them? Several people?
I'm sorry.
Who did write those plays?
Right. And my son-in-law, who's a Shakespearean actor, knows, you know, the glass is pinpointed as probably being the source of it.
It wasn't Francis Bacon.
No. But that's what I was trying to explain. The style of Francis Bacon writing is completely different from the Shakespeare plays. There's a lot of people who try to force it, you know, and say, oh, well, look, this is the same, but it's not. Francis Bacon writing in an ultra-polished style, in a conventional sense, and Shakespeare as Shakespeare. And the man didn't care. He's not a well-known person, but he had what it took. And people said, well, look, you had to know the court inside out to write this, and he did. Yeah. So anyway, we'll just go with the plays. and the question of who really wrote it. See, look, it is said of Francis Bacon that he rang the bell which called the wits together. Okay? He rang the bell which called the wits together, meaning he sponsored all kinds of things in the Mahachohatic department, art, science, a more rational type of religion, and a more rational type of magic process and organization. He did all that as a third-grade monad and a seventh-grade soul. But first of all, the soul grade is wrong for writing the Shakespeare plays. You've got to have a fourth-grade soul to write that. Just the way some people say that Beethoven, well, okay, he had a Beethoven, great German musician that he had a first-grade soul. I don't buy it at all. Your fourth-grade soul, first-grade personality, and then who knows what the higher rays still might be. Would be, first grade again. He was not an easy guy to get along with. His brother, conventional, used to make fun of Beethoven because he lived such an unconventional life. And so the brother would be really snooty and writing one of these letters, putting down, and he would sign the letter, your brother, or his name, brain owner. No, excuse me, he says land owner. Beethoven would write back and say, blah, 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 brain owner.
Michael, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, you have some comments from the audience in the question box.
What happened to the audience? Oh, they have some comments.
They've been talking to you and you've been ignoring them.
Okay. Okay. Well, I can't say I'm a brain owner at the moment. 1981, that's interesting. AIDS virus identified. That's interesting, Chris. Let's see, there's a few things here. Antoinette, yeah, I'm trying to be heard, and I think probably I will be better heard now because I'm on my own microphone. Teaching our children to be mindful and to meditate. This is one of the signals of the coming civilization. And look, the indigo children, so to speak, they are emerging. Little geniuses who are really members of the hierarchy. It's happening. They know things they shouldn't know if they're just a kid on the playground, okay? So agreed. And then Chris is saying, in 1981, humanity via a Russian, so it said, spacecraft landed on Venus, maybe. I don't know when they say something of that nature, considering the temperature of Venus and all the rest, I never know whether it is true or said. I think we still have plenty to go before we can manage that intensity. But that's my opinion. That humanity via a Russian spacecraft. Oh, not people in the craft. Okay, now I understand. That's different. I think so. Drilled, and what else did they do? Drilled, and I don't, BL, I can't get any more words.
I think it says take samples.
Drilled and retrieved the sample. Well, you know, you can retrieve the sample without people. I think it's more likely that we'll put our foot on the moon and Mars before we do that as humanity on Venus. This is my impression in terms of the development of the solar angel within humanity. When we're ready for that Venusian development, I think it'll happen, but this is just my opinion, and you probably have some reasons to back that up. 81.
No, but 1991 is the AIDS virus identified.
81 AIDS virus identified. Interesting. Yeah. We'd have to look at the astrology of it and the ray cycles, but thanks for mentioning these possibilities. Okay, interesting. Now, BL, guide me here. What else am I supposed to do? Who else? Other people want to talk? Do they have their?
No, I think that
have
was
their hand up?
No, that was it. I just wanted you to look at the chat box. I mean, the question box.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So look, any one of us could sit down and say, with some degree of intelligence, because we have studied the teaching, what a new civilization need, and how should the forces of reconstruction work? Because we are still reconstructing. As long as you have people living in the slums in Brazil and different parts of South America and the East and eating off the garbage heaps, reconstruction is still needed. As long as you have poachers killing to the point of extinction rare and wonderful animals, you see, just imagine what it would be if humanity decided to treat the animal kingdom with manas and with love instead of with guns. See, but there's still people at that stage. They feel ever so good when they can kill something, then they feel like the old days that, you know, they are the victor over the animal nature. I mean, it's got to stop, obviously. Reconstruction is absolutely needed, but we, as potential members of the new group of world servers, can think about what would be desirable. And the one thing I didn't mention, and nor did anybody else, the return of the mysteries of initiation under the Christ. The first initiation will be a public event. Imagine that. Yeah, in the church, maybe, yeah. And even the second initiation, it talks about it being far more accessible. Because after all, the Christ, the Bodhisattva, the Lord Maitreya, he gives the first and second initiation. Now, imagine what humanity will have to be thinking in order for this to take place. You were saying, Ash. When? Not for hundreds of years.
Some people said that was a nice initiation.
Well, people say a lot of things. I can honestly say that it probably was not any kind of ultimate first initiation of humanity, because DK says, when the Christ reappears and every eye shall see him, you know, that's the old saying, it will signal that humanity has taken the first initiation. Now, we're not getting the Christ right away. It's just obvious. When DK tells you what has to be prepared in the 5 planetary centers and the masters that have to live there, surrounded by their initiates, surrounded by their disciples, you know That's not going to happen overnight. It just can't.
As these things happen, is there somebody on the planet that is channeling DK and the hierarchy?
There's a lot of people who say they do that, but let's just say.
How do we know what passes? How do we know, like when you say
Discrimination. I'll tell you what, how did anybody know? The Theosophists rejected Alice Bailey just like that. And it turned out to be the real thing. And then the channelers are a dime a dozen, and they're telling you what they imagine the masters are saying. And they're not. The channelers are just running all over the place, quoting the platitudes of their own subconscious mind, says DK. 96% of those kinds of writings you said are completely erroneous. They have nothing to do with anything. And a few more maybe, I'm sorry?
So 96%
erroneous. And there's a few that where the writer is picking up messages between ashrams. None of it is Master DK. None. As he said when Alice Bailey died, I am looking for no new amanuensis. And 75 years would pass, or more. Yeah, about 75 years, 76 years, before he would be ready to write again in whatever way he's talking about. That's one of the great dangers for the teaching. Ambitious people who are also a bit proud imagine that they can go in there and channel the master, and it's just nonsense. And what they write, anybody could write. Or if they're smart and they're impressive because they write it, then any smart, impressive person could write it. Now, the minute you read, and I hope you all have Initiation, Human and Solar. Who's read that? Okay, I want everybody to read it. You see, the information there could not come from a normal human being. It just could not. And even though it's considered a simple book, it's only 200 pages long or whatever, it is profound. And it has to come, and how do you know? Your own intuition, your own discrimination will be put to the test. Now look, just the same way that Alice Bailey was rejected by the Theosophical Society, who's to say that the new giver of the Tibetans' material will not be rejected by the Lucis Trust, the Arcane School, and the present Bailey people, unless they wise up everybody and learn how to really discriminate. And here, I knew a guy, he was a little eager. He was ready when midnight of the year 2000 came. He had a pen in his hand and a paper in front of him. And he knew that he would be channeling the Tibetan exactly at that moment. Even though the Tibetans said, in the next century and early in the next, now that's really early in the next century. The minute the stroke of midnight hits and welcomes in the 2000s, that's really early. And you know, this man is very intelligent. And he wrote some very intelligent things that he, as an intelligent person, could write. But take a look at Initiation, Human and Solar. There's not one of us in this room that could write that, have it make sense, come up with the kinds of contacts that are involved in initiation ceremonies, the colors, the sounds, the vacuums, all kinds of stuff we know nothing about. a little book, 200 pages, but it's the real thing. So I suggest to us that when the year 2025 comes, we're going to be presented with a crisis of discrimination, because there's going to be 10 people, 15 people, 20 people that jump in with their pen raised up into heaven saying, I'm the one. You know it's going to happen. I'm going to write in pink ink. Purple is good too. It'll be a hint. It'll be a hint that maybe they're not the one. I'm the one. No, you're not. I'm the one. Okay. I remember a cartoon in the New Yorker with a Hindu Swami and a Buddhist abbot glaring at each other like this, and the host was introducing one to another. So he was saying, Swami X, I'd like you to meet Abbot B or Abbot Y. He too knows the secret of life. And they were enraged with each other because the other guy also knew the secret of life, you know. Now, of course, that's a joke. When you get Bishop Tutu and the Dalai Lama together, they recognize each other. They be from vastly different traditions, but they recognize each other. And I'll tell you what, another thing about the new civilization, the Antakarana has to be built. See, it's not yet time for the 6th root race. It begins in another 2,000 something years, and it will cultivate the intuition. But before that happens, the abstract mind has to be cultivated. And it's not very cultivated yet. And that's going to be one of the projects of the next 2,000 years, and will help to characterize the Aquarian civilization. The Immanuel Kant, 3rd ray soul, 7th ray personality, 5th ray mind. This is my estimation. He was a Taurus of all things, but obviously he was in the light. Not, you know, he just couldn't care less about so many of the material things. And he had Aquarius rising, and I think Moon in Aries or something. It allowed him to rise and elevate his mentality into the lowest part of the spiritual triad, which we call the abstract mind. So Aquarius is the sign of aviation, elevation, going up in the air, you know, and we're going to have all kinds of amazing transmission and realization of what lies on the plane of abstract mind. So think about it. It's up to you. What would you like to see in a new civilization? And of course, the very first thing that was said is the key to it all: right human relations. Is there anything else that anybody would like to say? Because I think, have we reached the point where we're... My wife says we have reached long time ago the point.
But I want to read something. You like that. But these first things, if there is anything who wants to look at it, we will end to this.
So, shall we now read the end? Because you could take, Michael, it's the problems of humanity, so then everybody can also read.
Problems of humanity?
The problems of humanity, page 64.
Page what?
64.
What are you going to do when your partner is deep? Okay.
What did he say? The partner is a beast. What can you do when your partner is a beast? So.
No, it's an old slang word for death. Deep. Isabel says a couple of things here. I just want to mention before we go into what you're doing there, that all we need to do now, so as to not fail again as humanity, as we did in 2000, well, you know, there was the big attack in 2001, is to realize that we are here to cleanse what we have created ourselves. And that's a very Aquarian thing to do, isn't it? What happens in the labor of Hercules to King Algeus and his stable? Hercules comes in and cleans up the stable, and Algeus gets mad about it. Okay, we need to move into inclusiveness, into love, in order to eliminate fear, which is our own creation. There is no us and them, and we're all one, and we forget. Well, we forget, and we forget. Well, yeah, Isabel, these are fine ideals.
Yeah.
And fine ideals. It is the way we go about doing it that is important. And our methods have to be effective. The great mantras, the great invocation, profound occult meditation, the consecrated creative imagination, all of these are methods. The use of words like isolated unity, inclusive reason, presented attributes. These are advanced meditative techniques on the first three rays. The words of power, the Tibetans give us, in other words, just convince yourself that we can work in group form, esoterically, in a way that will help. And then we go about doing that, and don't forget, as 2 years always emphasizing, what do you always emphasizing?
No matter what.
No matter what, yes. Triangles, no matter what. Triangles. When, as DK says, it's a work that must go on. And he never speaks lightly. He doesn't joke around. If the triangles work must go on, then we have to take him at his word. So think about the new civilization and you, the role you intend to play, what you would like to see, and what would make it really the Aquarian universal civilization all over the world. It's going to be one world. Think about what would do that. And then we'll be closer to the mark all the time. Okay, now, please.
So do you want to put that there? The text, Problems of Humanity and 64, and conclusion. Conclusion. Oh, sorry.
Okay, what are the beginning words?
Conclusion.
Confusion.
64, Michael.
Oh, 64. That's different.
It is different.
What I heard. And not only that, but
It's not there.
Yeah. Conclusion.
Okay. Yeah.
It is difficult for modern man to conceive of a time when there will not be no racial, national, or separative religious consciousness present in human thinking. It was equally difficult for prehistoric man to conceive of a time when there would be national thinking. This is a good thing for us to bear in mind. The time when humanity will be able to think in universal terms still lies far ahead, but the fact that we can speak of it, desire it, and plan for it, it is surely the guarantee that it is not impossible. Humanity has always progressed from stage to stage of enlightenment and from glory to glory. We are today on our way to a far better civilization than the world has ever known, and towards conditions which will ensure a much happier humanity, and which will see the end of national differences or class distinctions, whether based on an hereditary or a financial status, and which will ensure a fuller and richer life for everyone. It will be obvious that very many decades must elapse before such a state of affairs will be actively present, but it will be decades and not centuries if humanity can learn the lesson of the World War. And this is very important. If the reactionary and the conservative peoples in every nation can be prevented from swinging civilization back onto the bad old lines. But a beginning can immediately be made. Simplicity should be our watchword, for it is simplicity which will kill our old materialistic way of living. Cooperative goodwill is surely the first idea to be presented to the masses and taught in our schools, thereby guaranteeing the new and better civilization. Loving understanding, intelligently applied, should be the hallmark of the culture and wiser groups, plus effort on their part to relate the world of meaning to the world of outer efforts, for the benefit of the masses. My idea.
I was meditation deep. Believe me.
You have to go upwards.
Yeah.
Yes, upwards.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now can I sleep?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
I still read this. Loving understanding, intelligently applied, should be a hallmark of the cultured and wiser groups, plus effort on their part to relate the world of meaning to the world of outer efforts for the benefit of the masses. World citizenship, as an expression of both goodwill and understanding, should be the goal of the enlightened everywhere and the hallmark of the spiritual man. In these three, you have right relations established between education, religion, and politics. The keynote of the new education is essentially right interpretation of life, past and present, and its relation to the future of mankind. The keynote of the new religion must and should be a right approach to God, transcendent in nature and immanent in man. With the keynote of the new science and politics and of government will be right human relations, and for both of the education must be prepared the child.
Such a practical, wonderful book.
Yes.
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like the Robert Mueller World Core Curriculum for Children.
Yeah, I mean, Mueller was a great thinker, no question. When I worked there at the Arcane School, he was always being brought in to give his lectures, and he was such an optimistic person. And so much, of course, he had his own recriminations, but so much was accomplished under his watch. What was the University of Peace?
Yes,
in
I think so, in Costa Rica.
Something like that.
And then Gloria Cook created the School for Ageless Wisdom School,
Yeah.
K through 12, using his curriculum
Hmm.
with volunteers, no paid staff.
Yeah. Well.
Well,
So shall we say goodbye to the audience and
Women.
attendees? Wonderful that you have been with us, patiently with us, and that you have been standing our humor.
We call it that, do we? Okay.
I have
I'm trying
something to
see
say to you, Ben.
Who has been here? Look, every one of us is capable
Michael.
of thinking about a new civilization. And I say this in spite of the fact that I'm being given a signal from off the playing field that looks like this. Okay, good night, everybody, from our place.
And welcome tomorrow.
What time is it?
It is the morning meditation. It's going to be the Christmas story at 6 a.m. GMT.
Oh,
6 a.m. GMT.
oh,
Yeah.
they mean 8.
Yes, yes, yes.
So let us start one or.
You know, the old concept, you know, who can do the longest home? You know,
Yes.
time. Hey, I've got a threefold sequence. 1, 2, 3. If the first two don't work, I have a guitar in
Are we
my
done for the day?
Click your button.
It's finished for the day? Is there anything else happening today? Close it, close it.
Five.
Very wrong. Because you went, oh.